On the first day of Christmas, PseudoPod gave to me a special extra director's cut of the 15th anniversary episode 821 Celestial Shores, which came out in summer this year. This is Kat Day, assistant editor at PseudoPod. I am here with Dave Robertson, our production concierge, but also you will know his voice from all kinds of stories, but I will let him talk about that. Over to you, Dave.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yes, I have been a PseudoPod fan and aficionado and participant for many years now. Recently did Taxotomy, which was marvelous. Her Face All Teeth with my friend Poppy Beaujolais. The Most Dangerous Game. We did that one back in, 684, I guess? Was a wonderful retelling of that classic tale. Till the Road Runs Out by Luciano Morano. Oh, so many amazing horror tales. And then you asked me to put together this astonishing director's cut of the 15th anniversary episode, and that was a blast.
Yes, this is going to be great. So obviously this episode went out earlier this year, but there were a few extra bits that we did not quite manage to squeeze into the episode at the time because we wanted to get it out for Alastair Stewart's 15th anniversary at PseudoPod.
Right.
So we were working on a bit of a timescale, and there were a few bits and pieces we didn't quite manage to get in there, and the tower was upset with us. It grumbled, it complained. It's not good when the tower gets upset, Dave.
I know. We felt it all the way over here on the other side of the Great Pond. The darkness welling and surging in its displeasure, its writhing horror at our failure to properly elevate and celebrate the 15 years of fabulous horror that PseudoPod represents.
Exactly. This was it. And it was, we had to sort it out. So you have been working on this and done an amazing job. And I am so excited to bring this to everyone today. So we have got extra well wishes, haven't we?
Yes.
We've got extra well wishes.
Yep. More tributes from additional PseudoPod staff, which of course are astonishing, but also other professionals in the industry, authors and individuals who wanted to wish Al and PseudoPod a fine and wonderful celebration and anniversary.
Yeah, and I particularly am going to urge everybody to listen out for Alexander J. Newell, visionary genius, the likes of which the world has never known, from the Bagnus archives, because that's a brilliant bit of audio that he has done for us and for Al.
It really was. Yeah. And then extended outtakes. We took another pass through the recording process that Al and Marguerite did in recording Celestial Shores and found some more delicious tidbits and a few bleeps that have to go in there because when you mess up at the mic, things tend to get messy. So we have to bleep those out a little bit. But we found some more goodness there. That was fun.
Yes. Yeah, they are. They're very funny. I recommend taking a good listen to those. And there is a big selection of Alastair's outros from over the years, which that was a thing that we didn't quite squeeze in the first time round, did we? And they sound so good.
They
sound
do.
so good. I mean, also there is the fact you can hear Alastair's voice changing. He sounds about 15 years old, would you say, in the first few clips?
He really does. He was a babe. He was a babe in horror.
He was a baby, that's right. And obviously over the years you can hear him evolving into the marvellous horror host that he has become.
Yes.
And of course, he's always got something insightful to say about every story, and we've got some of his very best, very most brilliant comments for everyone to listen to.
It's like a trip through the past of those wonderful outro bits, because so many of us, when we first came to PseudoPod, it was Alastair's hosting, in addition to the stories, that added such depth and context for the experience. And to be able to pull those together, to create this like montage time frame of all of those delicious outros, that was inspired. I had a great deal of fun pulling those together.
It's really good. They are fantastic. So, This is going to start with the story. We've got the story.
Yep.
There is a special sound bed on this version. Is that right?
Right, yes. Sean Garrett did a wonderful job of creating this wonderful audio space, this sound space within which the story takes place. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so even if you listen to the story in the summer, don't be tempted, I'll just skip the story because I've already heard it. Listen to it again, because that sound bed absolutely makes it, doesn't it? It really is beautiful.
It really does. It really does. And
Yeah.
being able to hear a story with those embellishments and those enhancements is a wonderful addition, an enriching of that story experience.
Yeah. So, without further ado, we have a story for you.
And we promise you, it's true.
PseudoPod, episode 821 for July 27th, 2022. Celestial Shores by Sarah Day and Tim Pratt. Unless you've been listening to some pretty old episodes of this podcast, you probably have no idea who I am, and that's okay. I'm Ben Phillips, and I co-founded PseudoPod back in 2006 with Mur Lafferty. The following year, like a disembodied demon, we were looking for a host, and we were very fortunate to find Alastair Stewart hopping up and down and yelling, "Me, pick me," and the rest is history. Stay tuned after the story for a special tribute to Alastair from his partners in crime here at PseudoPod Towers. Today's story is a PseudoPod original that is a collaboration between Sarah Day and Tim Pratt. Sarah lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with her cat and a large collection of LED lights. Her interests include creature films, festival culture, and doing things on purpose. Find her online at sarahday.org or at ScrimblingFox. Tim Pratt is a Hugo Award-winning SF and fantasy author and has been a finalist for World Fantasy, Philip K. Dick, Sturgeon, Stoker, Mythopoeic, and Nebula Awards, among others. He is the author of more than 30 books, most recently Multiverse Adventures Doors of Sleep and Prison of Sleep. His stories have appeared at Tor.com, Lightspeed, Clark's World, Asimov's, and other nice places. He's a senior editor and occasional book reviewer at Locus, the magazine of the science fiction and fantasy field. Since 2013, he's published a new story every month at his Patreon, and he tweets incessantly at Tim Pratt. He lives in Berkeley, California. Your narrators today are the owners of Escape Artists, Alastair Stewart and Marguerite Kenner. Alastair is a professional enthusiast, pop culture analyst, writer, and voice actor. He now co-owns the Escape Artists podcasts and co-hosts both Escape Pod and PseudoPod. Alastair is an Audioverse Award winner, a multiple award finalist, including the Hugo, the Ignite, and the BFA, and has won the Carl Edward Wagner Award twice. He writes the multiple award-nominated weekly pop culture newsletter, The Full Lid. Marguerite practices as a technology lawyer in London. She loves to voice minor characters in podcasts and play video games, often where people can watch. Her contributions to genre fiction include being a 2021 Hugo Award finalist, editing Cast of Wonders from 2013 to 2019, project groups for too many industry orgs to count anymore, community organizing, mentoring, and teaching business skills to creatives. Now, pour yourself a tall Metamucil and unblock your chakras. We have a story for you, and we promise you it's true.
Celestial Shores,
by Sarah Day and Tim Pratt,
narrated by Alastair Stewart.
and Marguerite Kenner.
Britt drove silently while Ray gazed past her at the beauty of the rock-strewn ocean, beyond the sheer drop-offs and flimsy guardrails that separated the coast road from the end of the continent. They were farther north than he'd ever been in California, heading for Celestial Shores, a stretch of property that began life in the 70s as an intentional community and was now full of wealthy retirees with strong opinions about quiet hours and the evils of artificial light. Oh, and a few vacation rentals, one of which he'd snapped up at a reduced price on short notice as a way of apologizing for certain things without having to actually say he was sorry. That's our turn, he pointed, and Brett piloted their hybrid onto the unmarked asphalt road, past a sign that said private property above the symbol of Celestial Shores, a circle trifurcated by a pair of vertical, undulating lines. 2 more turns, and the main road was hidden entirely by the landscape of tall grass and scrub, and the occasional towering tree. The houses were scattered gracefully around the bluffs, all in a similar style, angular, ocean grey, floor-to-ceiling windows and decks and skylights, looking like a past decade's idea of modern and elegant. The homes were arrayed on the gentle slopes so that none interfered with the views of the others, and in between waved fields of tall grass with trails cut invisibly through them. The ocean boomed beyond, crashing white-capped against sea cliffs and seething around countless uprisings of pitted rock deeper in the water. Can you imagine being rich enough to live here full-time? Ray asked. What a life. Britt grunted, which was at least a kind of communication. They found the meandering driveway that led to their rental, the tweely named Harmony House, and left their luggage in the car while they went to check the place out. They'd once booked to stay at a rustic cabin that turned out to be rather more of a mouse-infested lean-to, so now there was always some worry that they'd wind up in a place overly amenable to hantavirus. Harmony House was glorious, though. And Brett smiled for the first time all afternoon when she walked across the brown tiles to the big windows with their unobstructed views of the sea, of grass, and the ocean beyond. Red hawks swooped through the air, riding the currents before disappearing into the trees. The inside was beautiful too, though the decor was heavy on driftwood, standard California beachfront fare. The only odd note was the dozen spheres of various sizes and colors suspended from the ceiling at random heights and intervals. Planetary models? No, the colors were too odd, with one gleaming black, another prismatic silver, and a third seemingly blown of blue glass. Ray walked up to Britt and put his arm around her waist. She stiffened and slid away out to the driveway to get her bag, ruining his chance to be gracious and fetch them himself. He decided not to let it bother him. She just needed time to relax. Why would she have agreed to come on this trip unless there was still hope to fix his really very minor mistake? There were no books in the house, just seashells, branches, and stones, except for a paperback with a rather too shiny cover tucked under the coffee table. He picked that up, curious. The words spheres, their secret harmonies and sacred strengths, stood out against a backdrop of coloured circles. The author was Horst Fischer, a name that was naggingly familiar for the moment it took him to place it. Horst Fischer owned this vacation house. Ray flipped through the book, a self-published New Age manifesto about the magical powers of mysterious cosmic spheres that visited humankind in secret, revealing themselves only to the elect and sharing their powers of protection and harmonization. The typesetting was extremely bad. The author bio said Horst was a PhD marine biologist who had discovered the truths of the spiritual world when he lost his wife Ingrid in a vaguely described sailing accident, and mainstream science failed to comfort him in his grief. The door creaked behind him, and footsteps approached. Host is some kind of insane sphere fanatic, he said. A real spiritual guy. He turned to make his eyebrow-raised pun face at Britt. But it wasn't Britt at all. The figure was backlit by the skylight, but they were far too short, far too stocky. At first, Ray thought the intruder was wearing an old-fashioned round diving helmet, but no, their head was encased entirely in a sphere, opaque, milky white, and when they raised their hands, Ray dropped the book and squeaked out a gasp.
Britt left her bag in the biggest bedroom, then slipped into the kitchen, avoiding Ray in the other room. She took a mug from the pantry, and the sink dispensed metallic-tasting well water, not much colder than the damp air inside the house. Even with all the doors shut, she could smell brine. It was a primo location, she had to give him that, swankier than they could have usually afforded. Ray was good at finding opportunities for sweeping romantic gestures, although this was more of a diving save. He'd scored a deal on this place and suggested it as an alternative to the anniversary he'd completely forgotten. He was better at gestures than apologies. Her mouth twisted. He'd protested that they were in love, they'd be together forever, and they'd have plenty of anniversaries to look forward to. But this was their first, and it hurt to think he didn't care. Some things you only get to experience once. First date, first kiss, first anniversary, first wife? No, don't go there. Britt had a hangover, which certainly wasn't helping her mood. And while some ginger tea might have, she couldn't find any in the kitchen, just jars of weird unmarked leaves that smelled pungently organic when she made the mistake of sniffing them. She settled for tap water warmed in the electric kettle with a squeeze from a geriatric lemon hiding in the back of the fridge. There was a plastic bear full of crystallized honey in one of the cabinets, and she scraped some out with a teaspoon, stirring it into the mug to make a hot toddy that was mostly just hot. Cupping the mug in her hands, she leaned against the kitchen sink and looked out the window overlooking the bluffs. The sun hung low over the ocean. They must be out on a point or something, because the GPS had made it look like the house faced north, but the setting sun was dead ahead. Not quite golden hour yet, but the light was taking on that hypnotic, syrupy texture she loved, casting little circular motes into her vision like a film editor was leaning heavy on the lens flare effect. Her vision swam. This was a hell of a hangover. Something moved on the bluffs in front of the house, and she squinted. A deer, picking its way cautiously through the scrub and round white stones among the cliff's edge. Britt had grown up in the suburbs of the East Bay with deer bouncing all over her backyard, but had lived in the city long enough that seeing one had become a novelty. The ocean side of the house was rimmed by a deck, and she opened the sliding glass door slowly, trying not to make a lot of noise. The deer froze, swiveling enormous eyes and ears towards the house. This close, she could watch its dainty jaw moving in an endless circle. Rudiments, she called up from her A Zoology of the West class she'd taken in college. They chew their food a lot to better digest it, like cows. The deer's eyes were perfect hemispheres, the soft black of the night sky. She waited for it to dip its head down into the grass for a bite, but it stared silently in her direction, jaw sawing mechanically, until she wanted to say something aloud, just to break the silence. Oceanside scrub must be tough to eat. It chewed and stared and chewed. The white stones scattered around its feet drew her eye. They were all smooth and about the same size, like giant eggs or puffy mushrooms or, morbid, skulls. A fawn stumbled out of the tall bushes beneath the deck, still so young it was peach fuzzy and dappled with spots, each one perfectly round. Britt squeaked with glee and turned back into the house to get Ray. He'd grown up in the heart of the city. He'd love this. She'd forgotten about being mad at him, at least for the moment. She turned a corner and found him in the living room, staring wide-eyed and hurt, baffled, like he'd just been slapped in the face with a dead fish. He blinked at her.
Did you see? Was that?
On the deck! Yes, there are deer! She turned to gesture out the window, but found the bluff standing wind-whipped and empty. The deer were gone. Oh.
No, I thought there was someone, a neighbor maybe, or maybe Horst.
Who's Horst?
He owns the place.
Ray made a visible effort to pull himself together. I didn't see anyone. The door locked behind me when I came in. She shrugged. These are weird. Britt tapped one of the hanging balls. It was deep inky black with a white swirl looping through it. The glass pinged with a deep sound like a gong or a Tibetan singing bowl. Kinda pretty, I guess. Ray gave a crooked smile.
You're prettier.
She rolled her eyes. Prettier than kind of pretty, I guess? Charmer.
You know what I mean.
He shuffled close and put a tentative hand on her arm. she decided to allow it on a temporary basis.
I hope you like it here. I know I messed up, and I want us to have a really good weekend to make up for it.
That was almost an apology.
Well, what do you want?
His face went from annoyed to panicked at showing annoyance, and then he gestured vaguely.
I booked this nice place. It's got
He looked up at the ceiling.
spheres. You love spheres. People ask, what does Brit love? And I say she loves spheres. Makes you easy to shop for.
She snorted a laugh despite her best intentions. You are an enormous asshole, Ray.
On my bad days. On my good days, I'm a really small one. I'm sorry. Okay, I say the magic words. I screwed up, and I am hoping to unscrew it.
She waited for the "and screw you" pun finale, but somehow he resisted, and she decided to let the ball of resentment she was holding float away. Okay, fine. I don't want to be mad all weekend anyway. That's no fun for me. Britt handed him her mug. Here, someone forgot to put whiskey in this. I need medication. My head is killing me.
Your wish and my command and all that.
Just don't forget next year.
So there's going to be a next year?
Provisionally. She smacked his ass and he went off to the kitchen. She looked out the window and watched people moving across the grass. So far away they were doll-sized, a little knot of 3. One of them seemed to be wearing some kind of big fishbowl diving helmet. Weird. She turned away and the spheres above her swayed in the wind of her passing.
They ambled down the street until they hit a trail marker, one decorated with that split circle emblem, and that led them to a neatly mowed 5-foot-wide trail through the tall grass on a diagonal path towards the ocean. The stalks bent in the wind about waist-high, much taller, and this would be less of a trail, more of a maze. Brett held Ray's hand, and that felt like a triumph. He thought anniversaries were silly. If you show up every day, who needs special occasions? Birthdays and all that, they were just traps to get you in trouble, but being with someone meant accepting the things they found important. She was laughing at his jokes again, too. He'd shown her the sphere book, but omitted his weird hunger hallucination about a sphere-headed stranger, and they'd been riffing on the absurdity. Is not the sun a sphere? Does it not shine its spherish glory upon us?
Is the sacred butt not also like unto a sundered sphere?
They reached the bluffs, and Brett stepped confidently out onto a tiny little point of grassy land, an inch from a 100-foot drop onto jumbled rocks and smashing waves, and Ray physically shuddered. The imp of the perverse piping up to say, "Oh, hey, hello. What if you pushed her?" He never would, of course. Not her, not anyone, but it was such a moment of balance and vulnerability. Death was very close here, he realized, in a way it wasn't usually. His head swam, a rare attack of vertigo, and he crouched down and grabbed onto some grass with both hands. Circles swarmed in his vision. It was like a fleet of UFOs, composed of dizziness and flashes of sunlight from the waves. He blinked, and they went away. He stared into the dark water around the rocks, some shattered remnants of sea cliff as big as school buses or small houses. He watched diving cormorants, and was that the nose of a seal? He almost pointed it out to Britt, but it vanished. Mostly, he watched long, undulating things move beneath the surface of the waves, as if trying to reach into the world of air, and light, and warmth. Long fronds of kelp, surely, but they seemed to move of their own accord, not just with the motion of the waves, but against it. They looked like reaching tentacles, like some kind of underwater entity of unimaginable vastness was trying to...
Is that a seal?
He followed her pointing finger, expecting to see the one he glimpsed earlier, but this was paler and it didn't move right. And honestly, it looked more like, "Is that a body?" he said, and she turned and looked at him before gazing back at the water, where the pale thing had vanished.
Probably driftwood.
They watched the water for a long time. The pale floating thing did not reappear. They decided to walk on, not holding hands, both deep in their thoughts, following the trail closest to the bluffs, stopping occasionally just to take in the severe, broken beauty of the coastline. A group of 5 people, all older, wearing floppy hats and carrying formidable walking sticks, approached from the other direction. the sound of their squabbling arriving ahead of them.
Which is why we don't let just anyone join the HOA. Not everyone is willing to pay their dues.
It's a special place, with as many responsibilities as privileges, and not everyone gets that, a second said.
The problem with being in a community is everyone has an opinion,
A third said, and then they all stopped, right in the path, blocking the way forward.
Hello?
Britt said, and Ray offered a little wave. The one in the lead, short and stocky and white-haired, grunted.
You're staying at Horst's place. What do you think?
It's really nice, said Ray. This whole place is wonderful.
Well, we aim to keep it that way. That's what a community is for.
She spoke like someone had argued with her about it. The group broke around them and continued on. Brett and Ray watched them go. The group resumed their arguing once they gained a little distance, and an errant breeze brought the words,
Seem energetic enough, that's something.
Ray raised his eyebrows at Brett. The rich are different.
The rich are assholes. Can you imagine having an argument about HOA dues? Get some real problems, people.
Are the rich not also beloved by the spheres?
I'm so hungry I could eat a sphere.
Ray brightened. I brought tomatoes and mozzarella balls so we can have a caprese salad. It will be a meal of spheres.
Better we eat the spheres than the spheres eat us, I guess. They enjoyed a light dinner with a bottle of rosé they found in the pantry. Are you sure we should be taking their food? She had asked. Ray pointed at the pattern of interlocking bubbles on the label, mouthed,
Spheres.
And they took it as a sign. As the evening went on, he made her laugh again, and the last of the murk between them settled. When they went to bed, they had silly, tender, half-drunk sex, and at the end of it, he whispered that he loved her more than all the spheres in the sky. Britt fell asleep, remembering what she liked about him after all. She even had a nice dream. She floated on her back in still black water, gazing up at the sky, and the stars floated down closer to her, revealing themselves to be spheres of light in many colors, bobbing gently around her. So energetic, the dimmest of the spheres whispered, drifting down close to her smiling face, its honey-colored warm light and comforting. She woke to Ray, shaking her and babbling.
Get up, wake up, you have to get up, you have to see.
The fuck? Britt was never at her best first thing in the morning, and from the darkness outside, it was still the middle of the night. Ray was lucky she remembered how to speak English. What? What is it?
Outside.
Ray's fingers were cold against her skin. He trembled like a chihuahua.
There's something happening outside.
What? A jumble of disconnected possibilities tumbled through her mind. This was California, so the standard roster of natural disasters flicked by. Earthquakes, tidal waves, wildfire.
The stars. You have to see the stars.
You woke me up in the middle of the night to look at the stars?
Just come on.
I'm going to kill you. And meant it with all her heart. The biggest window in the bedroom was a sliding glass door that opened onto the deck. A hot tub, big enough to seat 4, was sunk into the wooden surface. Ray had pulled the cover off, she assumed to have a soak during one of his frequent middle-of-the-night insomnias. She looked up and the stars were bright, clear, perfectly nice, nothing they hadn't looked at hours ago. Ray stepped to the edge of the tub and pointed wordlessly into its depths. She squinted. What? The light from the bedroom reflecting off the water cast a haunting, wavy reflection along Ray's torso. In the dim light, he looked gaunt and deep-eyed, haunted.
Don't look at the water. Look at the stars. On the water.
She blinked, refocusing her eyes, and looked again. The surface of the water rippled, and the reflected stars bounced along in the miniature tide, split into doubles and unified again. But something wasn't right. Were the stars different colors? Were they moving beyond the movement of the water? Britt looked at the sky. The stars were still. That's bizarre. Ray grabbed her arm.
The water reflecting something that's not in the sky. Yeah, that's weird. But the sky is weird too. Look at it. It's all wrong. Shouldn't there be a moon? Even if the moon is below the horizon, where the fuck is Jupiter?
She was no astronomer, but anyone who'd gone on a weekend camp out with the Girl Scouts could find the Big Dipper. Orion, Polaris. Her little sister had emailed an astrology forecast to her every week for the last 3 months, and Britt read the damn thing even though astrology was bullshit, so she knew where Jupiter was because it was nearing opposition. Jupiter was the brightest thing in the sky at night this summer, a solid point of orange-white fire. But not now. No Jupiter. No familiar constellations. Alien stars. What? She said again and then stopped, because Ray wouldn't be able to explain it any better than she could.
Those stars aren't ours. I'm not even sure they are stars. They don't look...
He squeezed her arm, raising a trembling hand to point towards the horizon, or where the horizon would be if it wasn't too dark to see anything. Gold sparks clustered together in the darkness beneath the stars, each one a tiny point of light. As they watched, the 6 points swept in close together, then broke apart to spiral around each other in a tiny ballet. It's a bonfire. Someone's out on the bluffs. I think they're dancing, holding torches or sparklers or something. 2 of the points of light broke away from the group and drifted straight up into the sky. Britt thought of lantern festivals, of wishes being made and coming true.
Are they growing?
The 2 sparks swelled. Britt stared at them until her mind jumped tracks and she stopped perceiving them as growing. She realized they were actually getting closer. She took a step back towards the house, pulling her arm out of Ray's grasp. We should go inside. But then the spheres were upon them. The 2 lights resolved themselves into volleyball-sized orbs, honey-colored and giving off a watery, eldritch luminescence, like bubbles filled with glowing champagne. They drifted over the deck and stopped in front of Britt and Ray, tethered to nothing, supported by nothing. Dreamy. Britt's breath slowed down, her muscles relaxing like she'd just drunk a beer too fast. Ray gazed rapt at the sphere hovering before him and reached out a hand. Alarm stirred in her sluggish mind. What are you doing? Don't touch it!
Britt.
He blinked. The reflection of water from the hot tub on his face had been replaced by golden ripples of light.
They're the spheres. The ones Horst wrote about. Harmonies. Can you hear them?
There was something. A faint ringing sound, like the aftermath of a bell being struck. She thought back to the sphere hanging in the living room, ringing when she had tapped it. She resolutely refused to listen. Horst is an insane person. These are just St. Elmo's fire or something. Ball lightning, a natural phenomenon. They are natural. The voice came from the other side of the deck railing, and Britt shrieked and took a step back. The spheres bobbed at the sound, each flickering a little. But there are mysteries beyond human understanding in nature, from the depths of the sea to the dark beyond the last stars. Some of those mysteries are frightening, and some are beautiful. The spheres are beautiful. They reveal themselves only to the elect. You have been chosen. Ray looked away from his sphere with visible effort.
Who's there?
A short, stocky figure stepped out of the darkness, head encased in a milky white fishbowl helmet. She was followed by 4 others, each wearing a thick indigo cloak and holding a clear ball the size of a grapefruit. Britt recognized them as the group they'd passed on the bluffs earlier. The balls they held emitted the same yellowy glow as the floating spheres. The 4 points of light near the horizon were gone, Britt realized. These were the dancers, and their leader. The one in the milky helmet spoke. Why wasn't her voice muffled? Each year, we give of ourselves to feed the spheres, and in return, they keep us safe and prosperous and healthy. We used to offer only those from our community, but as we've gotten older, the spheres find us less nourishing than before, and so sometimes we welcome others to our communion. Ray stepped back, the sphere hovering in front of him, keeping pace.
Shit, babe, there's some kind of sphere cult?
The cloaked figures moved in closer, laying hands on her and Ray's arms. "Let go of me!" She jerked her arm away, but they just moved with her, flowing rather than fighting. "The resonances and harmonies within you will strengthen the spheres, and their power will keep us all safe. I envy you this experience. The spheres assure us that your consciousness will live on within them, and oh, the sights you'll see, the thoughts you'll think, the voids you'll taste." They're going to kill us, Britt realized. They're going to sacrifice us to aliens or something to keep their stock portfolios healthy and their hips from breaking and their property values high.
Fuck this.
Ray jerked violently away, and to Bryn's shock, he glared at her.
Why did you have to make such a big deal about me forgetting our stupid anniversary? No, you had to have something special. You wanted a trip. Well, here's a trip. We're gonna goddamn outer space or something now.
I would have been happy with a nice dinner, you asshole. Please, you'll cause disharmony. Don't upset the spheres. This is a very delicate time. The stars are going wrong. We should proceed before the balance shifts irrevocably. The other cultists began to hum, their voices harmonizing with the distant chime Britt was still trying to ignore. She tried to make a break for it, but one of the younger cultists stepped into her way. He was still old enough to be her dad, for fuck's sake. She was getting sacrificed to aliens by goddamn boomers. He handed his sphere to the leader, and when Britt tried to dart around him, he bear-hugged her and held tight, dragging her back to the circle. The leader considered Ray, whose face had gone curiously slack after the humming started. He hadn't even reacted to Britt's attempt to flee. What was wrong with him? Had he always been so weak and she just hadn't noticed? "Start with him," the elder instructed. Ray blinked.
What? Why? Why start with me? I didn't even want to come here. This was all her idea.
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
This is bullshit.
Asshole! Britt wrestled hard against the cultist holding her, trying to stomp his instep and whipping her head back to smash his nose, but he was ready for all that, like he'd done this before. Oh God, of course they'd done this before. The sphere floating in front of Ray, alit gently on his upturned forehead, pulsed a sharp white light, and then it was like he was a man-shaped pool float someone was squeezing all the air out of. He deflated, skin sagging and collapsing, and the sphere began to glow a deep red. His bones poked out against his skin, sharp protuberances, like he was a tent that had collapsed in a rainstorm. Ray made a sound she'd never heard before, like an old book having its spine cracked, dry, desiccated, helpless. The cultists held up the emptying husk of his body. She thought for sure he was dead, but then his eyes moved and he looked at her. A moment later, his eyes deflated too, transformed from spheres into dried, whitish raisins. Britt's screaming drowned out the sound of the cult's chanting. The cultist dropped Ray's body to the deck, where it made a soft, shivery rattle. He was completely drained of fluid, of vigor, of life. The sphere above him pulsed with fresh vitality, illuminating a space around the deck as big as a football field, casting hard shadows. Britt sagged in the cultist's arms, shuddering with terror. She wondered if anyone would see the glowing sphere, if anyone else even existed in this weird, not California, or if they were alone under these unknown stars. "There's no need to grieve. Your love is among the spheres now. He lives eternally in their light." Her love had just tried to feed her to the spheres first, so Britt had a decidedly mixed reaction to that. grief and love and terror and fury chasing their tails inside of her, but there was no time to sort through her emotions. There was a second sphere. She was next. A deer climbed up onto the deck, hooves clicking, followed haltingly by a fawn. The same fawn from this morning, Britt thought. It had those same perfectly round white dots. 2 of the red hawks they'd seen circling earlier landed on the deck railing and peered at Ray's body with interest. As she watched, the deer made their way shyly into the circle of cultists. The leader placed a gentle hand on the adult deer's back, stroked the downy fur. Our community lives in perfect harmony with nature. All of us together, man and woman and bird and deer alike, in allegiance to the spheres. The baby deer bent its tiny head and ate a tuft of Ray's hair off his skull. One of the men stopped chanting.
Deer are opportunistic osteophages, he said helpfully. That means they eat bone when they can. Lots of people don't know that.
The leader nodded. The spheres take their sustenance, and when they are done, the deer and birds feed on what remains. No part of you is wasted. It's all part of the great design. All things serve the spheres. All things serve the spheres, the other cultists murmured in unison. They resumed chanting, and the other, dimmer sphere bumped a bit closer to Britt. The baby deer looked directly into Britt's eyes and swallowed a mouthful of Ray's scalp. Britt mule-kicked the cultist, holding her in the kneecap. Something slid under her heel, and the man screamed. Britt bounced both feet off the ground and broke through his grip, charging directly towards the elderly woman. The chanting faded. No, you mustn't interrupt! Britt barreled into the old woman and knocked her down. She snatched up the glass ball from the leader's arms. The woman had tried to protect it when she fell, like she was holding a baby, and that meant it must be fragile. Britt expected the sphere to feel like glass, but it was warm and yielding, like holding an oversized eyeball. She spun and hurled the hideous thing directly at the sphere that had eaten Ray. The brighter sphere detonated on impact. It didn't shatter, but exploded with a wet pop, showering the surrounding area with luminescent goo that hissed and sizzled where it landed. Some fell on Britt's outstretched hand, burning her, and she screamed, but it was hard to hear over all the others screaming. The deer and birds fled in a burst of hooves and feathers, and the deck plunged into darkness.
No! No!
One of the cultists seized her by the shoulders and shook her over and over.
You stupid bitch! You've killed us all!
Britt looked past him to the night sky over the sea and watched the stars shift and change. There were familiar patterns there again, and the baleful gleam of Jupiter and the brightly shining moon illuminating the waves. Britt began to laugh. Whatever these evil bastards had been trying to do, she'd ruined it. Sure, Ray had died, and maybe she would die, but at least she'd spoiled the rich white vampire's fear cult bullshit. The elderly woman stepped forward. Let her go, she murmured. The cultist stopped shaking Britt and turned away, hiding his face in his hands. Britt slid down and sat on the deck, cradling her burned hand to her chest. The elderly woman sat beside her. It doesn't matter now. The spheres have protected us for generations, but they can't protect us anymore. Oh no, you'll have to pay property taxes now? Britt sneered. Your old men will have to buy boner pills online like everyone else? You'll get cancer sometimes, you murderous fucks? The woman blinked at her and shook her head. Oh, no. The spheres didn't only protect us. She gestured at the weeping cultists around her, then made a larger, more expansive gesture. They protected all of us. Me, you, your friends, your family, every other living thing on this planet. Britt frowned. What are you talking about? Did you know I used to think the ocean was beautiful before I learned about the spheres. About the spheres and what they held back. The woman sighed as she pointed at the sea. Look. Brett looked. The moon still shone down, but it didn't just illuminate the ocean anymore. Now it illuminated the undulating things rising up out of the ocean. They weren't smooth and organic like kelp, or the arms of a cephalopod, or anything else she'd expect to emerge from the sea. They were jagged and angular, branching like bolts of lightning rendered in quivering, slick, shiny flesh. She watched them rise until they towered high enough to blot out the moon entirely.
I'm a proud subscriber of my local newspaper. I think everyone should be. It's one of the last bastions of news that no one can pretend they didn't publish exactly the way they published it. No need to argue whose screenshot is more authentic when they printed thousands of identical copies and physically sent them all over the place. However, I can tell newspaper subscribers are a dying breed by the prevalence of hearing aid ads and AARP membership offers in my paper. It's a news source for old-fashioned people, I suppose, who realize that getting information faster doesn't make it more accurate, and taken to its logical extreme, the earliest report is just the flimsiest rumor. No one has had time to check any facts. Increasingly, I worry whether most people are kind of okay with that. Personally, though, not only do I not want my news faster, I'd be alright with it if they slowed down even more and researched the hell out of anything before reporting on it at all. If I wanted every single unverified factoid anyone came up with today, I've got the internet for that. All of this, ironically, I realize, from the instigator of a podcast that guarantees you every horror story we tell you is true. A tagline that sounded amusingly sinister in 2006 and has only gotten more so over time. So, I don't know how thin the veil is where you're living, or if you need to worry about your neighbors hunting sacrifices, but if I were you, I'd make sure my neighborhood association dues were paid up, that's for sure. In other news, today we're celebrating 15 glorious years of Alistair Stewart hosting PseudoPod, a man whose garrulous conviviality added the spark of personality that has made this podcast the success it is. In an anthology like this, it's worth noting he is our longest-running character, surviving even when none of the others do. The experience of working with him was much like the experience of listening to an episode in that no matter how grim things got, he always gave me something to look forward to. Here to share their thoughts are just a few of the other well-wishers who took the time to express their gratitude.
To Alistair Lonely Sea Dad Stewart. I'm writing to you with regards to your 15 years anniversary as a podcasting personality. You will, of course, remember that in previous correspondence I have accused you of being the very reason I am now trapped in this particular audio purgatory that is podcasting. Escape Artists was indeed the first work of fiction I had encountered by podcasting technology. I heard your voice all those years ago welcoming me to the warm embrace of audio fiction, a soothing introduction into what we both know is, of course, a hellish and macabre industry of debauchery, duplicity, and something else bad ending with E. I recall thinking to myself at the time, what a desperately smart and kind-sounding person. I'm sure he's utterly insufferable in real life. You can understand then my excitement years later when you agreed to appear on the Magnus Archives, a rather unambitious sideshow I had merely thrown together to confound my competitors. Finally, my utterly unfounded and unreasonable prejudice of you could be proven right. Alas, though, what a disappointment you instead turned out to be. You had travelled hours to an obscure address in the middle of nowhere and were still friendly, witty, well-liked, and in fact brought donuts for the entire production team. I held out hope that you might perhaps be a terrible performer, unskilled and, dare I hope, boorishly arrogant, but No matter how many times I forced you to retake lines for increasingly arbitrary reasons, whilst declaring myself a visionary genius the likes of which the world has never known, you still did not complain. In fact, God help me, but I seem to recall an element of, professional pride in your performance. Suffice it to say, I was left bereft upon your departure, as I had been forced to conclude that you are in fact a wonderful person, and somehow deserve your well-earned title as a mainstay of the industry. Not only that, you have since cemented these unfortunate conclusions and thrown quite the shade upon my famously misanthropic views upon life, the universe, and everything therein. It is thus with great reticence and no small regret that I am forced to wish you well, and congratulate you on an enviable career to date matched only by your admirable personal qualities. Begrudging regards, Alexander J. Newell, visionary genius the likes of which the world has never known.
Hey, Alistair, it's Myrrh. I want to take a little time-travel trip. Escape pod, sorry. And go back to somewhere around mid-2000s, where the audience was considering getting together a fund to buy you a better microphone because they loved your voice, but wanted to upgrade your system. And I want to go back in time and tell that guy you have no idea how far you're going to go. Congratulations, man.
About 8 years ago, I started hearing this disembodied Manx voice coming out of the devices. 4 years ago, I woke up in this place. Dark, damp, and reeking of petrichor. That's how I got to know my buddy Alistair. He is an enigma. While putting together this anniversary thing, I've re-listened to him from the very first episode he hosted, and a peculiar psychology emerged. Alistair has stewed himself in the worst fears of humanity for 15 years. Some really weird, deranged shit, y'all. And he has somehow become better, kinder, more inclusive, more empathetic, more hopeful. So, he is clearly abnormal, but I guess in a good way.
This is Tim Pratt, author of various things, and I just wanted to join the chorus of congratulations to Alistair for an astonishing 15-year run. That's a decade and a half of solid pseudopoddery. Congratulations.
Hey Al, it's Chelsea. Happy 15 years. What an amazing achievement. Just wanted to say that before I cold emailed PseudoPod about 5 years ago to see if I could come on board as an audio producer, before that, I was a longtime fan of the show. And a big part of that was your hosting. And I think your incredibly vast knowledge of horror and weird fiction and of science fiction is just stellar to behold. And it gives you such an interesting and insightful mind for horror. It's been such an honor to work with you. So thanks. And here's to another 15 years.
Hey, Alistair, congrats on 15 years at PseudoPod. This is Sarah Day, and back in 2021, PseudoPod published my first short story ever. So thanks for everything that you have done and continue to do to help aspiring writers like me start their careers. Happy anniversary. Have a good one.
Hello, it's Marty Perrett here, audio producer and person. When I was banished to a distant world full of wonders and horrors, such as dragons, evil spirits, hobgoblins, trolls, banshees, sacropomelus, gorgons, ogres, and ill-tempered goats, living off my limited wits and even smaller supply of cake, Alistair frequently visited me with flasks of tea and words of encouragement. One day he said, "I have found a way to bring you home." I can't do the voice. "But the price is heavy. You must spend the rest of your life making me sound good." "Okay," I said, and here I am. Congrats on the 15 years, Al. You're a legend. All the best, mate.
Hi, Alistair. It's Tanya Ransom from Nightlight, the Black Horror Fiction podcast. The support from you and the Escape Artist team helped Nightlight become what it is today, and I truly can't thank you enough. This may be your 15th anniversary hosting PseudoPod, but you are more than just a host. You are a vital part of the podcasting community, and I'm so thankful to call you a friend.
Al and I first met after I asked him to narrate one of my stories before I joined the EA team. I didn't realise then that we'd go on to become colleagues and friends, but I'm very glad we have. He's always kind, always generous, always willing to listen. If someone needs lifting up, Alistair will be there cupping his hands to give them a boost. And today, it's our turn to do that for him. Thanks, buddy.
It sounds like hyperbole, but it's literally true. I wouldn't be who and where I am today, talking to you, without PseudoPod. Hi everyone, this is Marguerite Kenner. In addition to co-running Escape Artists, I am lucky enough to spend my life with the man of the hour. We are partners in all things. Well, almost all things. There are some TV shows and movies truly only he can love. Alistair and I met because of PseudoPod. Back before I even had a cell phone, and loaded each episode manually on my iPod for my Bay Area commutes. PseudoPod and a drive-through iced coffee became my Friday ritual, the start of the weekend. Leaving comments on stories turned into chatting on Twitter, turned into 10 years and counting of this confounding, hilarious life of ours. Even after all these years of editing Alistair's TFL articles and listening to his endcaps, it amazes me how his red string brain can pull together disparate pieces of multimedia to give context and scope. It's not just that his honesty with his experiences and emotions is inspirational. It is, but more so his refusal to leave unchallenged the idea that anything is just that thing. There's always history and influence, aspiration and homage, another angle or lens through which any art can be viewed. I mean, he wrote an entire TTRPG source book about Colin Baker's 6th Doctor Who. Who does that? It's been such a privilege to watch him develop and leverage not just his critical skills, but his vocal talents. And again, with that same open honesty about what learning and failing and trying again looks like. He's shown so many people how podcasting can be a way to speak their truth and bring their stories to life. And that they never have to do it alone, no matter how much Peter Lucas might pretend otherwise. Congratulations, sweetie. 15 years of Chris the DJ cosplay along the back corridors of the Night Gallery. Your insight, your positivity, and your constant spotlighting of the hope in the horror has captivated and entertained millions. And you inspire me every day. I love you. I'm so proud of you. And you are absolutely getting that PseudoPod tattoo you promised yourself.
Alright, so now, as we mentioned at the start, we have got a selection of Alistair's outros from over the years. Most of these have been pulled together by our co-editor, Alex Hofflick. So he has cherry-picked some of Alistair's best outros, some of his most insightful comments, his funniest comments, his best things that he's said about stories. Give this a listen, you will absolutely love it. He has so many amazing things to say.
Welcome to PseudoPod, the weekly horror podcast. I'm Alistair Stewart, the new guy, and I've been thinking a lot about change. After all, as a listener since the get-go, I'm acutely aware of the huge shoes I have to fill and the consistently high-quality stories that Mer, Ben and the team have broadcast. Mer did a fantastic job here, and if there's any justice in the world, Edward James Olmos is making an origami unicorn for her right now. Mer, we salute you. Go get 'em. Of course, the flip side to following an act like Mer is realising that most people couldn't pick me out of a lineup. I'm an unknown quantity, and I'm sure a lot of you are wondering whether I'm going to be a fly in the ointment or a shot in the arm. So let me reassure you all that I have every intention of carrying on PseudoPod's proud tradition of injecting the best horror fiction out there directly into your periodontal atrium. Firstly, because I'm a huge fan, and secondly, because Ben's told me he'll lock me in the cupboard under the stairs if I don't. Should art be about the artist or about the response of the person looking at it or listening to it? Art, when it comes down to it, grants the artist a second life, whether they want it or not. From the Sistine Chapel to Chris Ofili's Elephant Dung artwork, from Squadron Supreme to the "Just This Once, Everyone Lives" speech in one of Stephen Moffat's Doctor Who episodes, art elicits an emotional response, and if the artist is very lucky, that response hooks it in the viewer's memory. That's why I can still hum the theme to Otherworld which dates me horribly, by the way. Why, the closing scene of Clerks 2, with Frustrated Incorporated by Soul Asylum playing as the screen fades to black and white, chokes me up every single time. It's why I still reread certain old Batman comics, why Isaac Asimov stories still make me smile. It's also why I'm very glad the piece of X-Files fanfic I wrote when I was 19 is nowhere on the internet, but I'm not going there. The Soul Cages by Sting was pretty much the first album that I listened to that had a serious impact. The second was the greatest hits of the Sisters of Mercy, and I'm honestly not sure which one damages my cool more. Anyway, I am of course aware that this forever shoots down the dreams of the last few people out there who thought I was even remotely rock and roll, but you know what? I'm okay with that. It had the impact it did because it's an album about, amongst other things, shipbuilding and what it's like to live by the sea. Now, as Sebastian the Crab will tell you, living under the sea is awesome, but living next to it, well, you spend a surprising amount of time trying to make sure it doesn't kill you.
A friend of mine once got a job by role-playing himself. Seriously, he worked out what qualities of himself he'd like to bring to the fore, worked up a rudimentary character sheet, and treated the interview like live-action role-playing. He got hired too. I've talked before about how we're different people when we're around different people, and I'm sure I will again because it's something that fascinates me, and frankly there's only so many things I like to talk about. We're different people, different aspects of people depending on who we're with. Family, friends, lovers, colleagues. Every one of us is a choir, a collection of voices with different soloists, all depending on time, place and company. Every day, every conversation, every moment the board is cleared and the rules change. Or, to put it another way, variety really is the spice of life, and, as we all know, whoever controls the spice controls the universe. The thing is, though, it's also really difficult. I've lost count of the amount of times I've been the wrong version of me in the wrong company. I've said the wrong thing. I've acted stupidly. But the point is, it's the choice I make, the choice everyone makes. We choose who we want to be, for better or for worse. The quote goes, "I will show you fear in a handful of dust." Ligeti shows us a universe of fear in nothing but a scratchy, faded audio tape and a hushed voice. As I said, it's an honour. And not just to have him here, but you as well. 350 episodes is a milestone, so much so that if this was a comic, one of us would be dead, married, back from the dead, or in a new costume by now. Of course, we'd also all be two-dimensional and four-colour, so I think we win. The other thing we win out on is, well, look at this thing. For 301 episodes, I'm contrary, what can I say? I've had the opportunity to come here, listen to the best horror fiction on the planet, and talk to you about it. I joke about this being my dream job, but it really, truly is. I love this. We all do. We wouldn't spend anywhere near as much time on it if we didn't. This podcast has grown into something rich and strange, full Fathom 5's worth of darkness and light and humour and horror. In the 301 episodes I've been here, I've learned more about horror and myself than I ever thought I would. Not the least of which is, I love this weird, misshapen, occasionally dim-witted genre. I love SF and I love fantasy, but it's the difference between tea and good whiskey. I couldn't read nothing but horror, but god damn if I don't get a shot of the best stuff on the planet once a week, and it sets me up every time. I will never stop being grateful for that, and if we make it to episode 700, I plan on telling you all this all over again. I find myself thinking more and more about horror existing in the spaces where nothing else does. It's tied into the subversion of expectation that, in turn, lies at the heart of a lot of the all-time greats. Jonathan Harker's new client is not a jovial old Middle European eccentric. The Poltergeist house is not built on an empty graveyard. More recently, the apparent assault that opens It Follows is an assault, but not just for the reasons it first seems to be. That's what horror is, and it's why it's so closely tied to surprise, something which is, in turn, so closely tied to joy. Horror is the moment our feet are taken out from under us. It's the point, to draw from experience, at the top of Tower of Terror, where it starts to fall, and the voice in the back of your head politely says, "Hey, what if the brakes fail this time?" Horror is the calls coming from inside the house. It's the company sending the Nostromo to LV-426, knowing full well what was there. Horror is when you realise the status is not quo. Surprise and joy are where you realise that's because something better has replaced it. I get in a lot of trouble every now and then for talking about horror as an inherently hopeful genre, and it is. And what sort of hope it provides depends on your mood. The darkest flavour is, of course, Schadenfreude. We laugh because we would never do anything so stupid. We scream at the two-dimensional monster that is safely trapped within those 2 dimensions. We embark on a journey into the darkness on rails, knowing full well that however bad it gets, we will come out the other side. The ride will stop. It is, to quote one of the greatest comedians of all time, just a ride. Then there's the kind of horror embodied by that quote and this story. The kind of horror cut with the espresso buzz of joy, of discovery. The repeated refrain here, it's an adventure, is one redolent with meaning, and by no means all of them positive. This is what happens when you step off the track. This is what happens, it's implied heavily, when whatever's just off the track sees you. Picture the scene. I walk past you. You look up, surprised. You're back early. Genre's haunted. You blink. Shake your head. What? I walk past again. Armed this time. Genre's haunted. And head back out. It's 700, folks. Let's get weird. There is, in this, the year of our Lord 2022, Keanu and Say What Now, a certain amount of resonance to both survivors, isn't there? There's a line from the American remake of deeply weird UK genre show Life on Mars that resonates with me on a very deep level. Harvey Keitel's character, Gene Hunt, is explaining why he does what he does, and the roundup is that when he's gone, people will say, and this is the quote, "When my time is done, people will say he has been here. Of that, I am sure." That drive can split one of 2 ways. The temptation to gouge your name into the flesh of the world, a world in particular that has spent the last 2 years working even harder to demonstrate how cruel, venal, and ignorant it can be, is very, very strong, a lot of the time. The second instinct, to leave the world a better place than you entered it through your work, is far less belligerent and far more important.
Now, as a part of the original anniversary episode last summer, they included some outtakes from Alistair and Marguerite's recording of the story. And I was given the full outtake reel, and went back through and found a few more choice bits of hilarity that happened behind the mic as they were recording that. And now it is our singular pleasure to present that to you now.
Hello, PseudoPod. It's
Hey,
Marguerite and Alistair, and we are crammed together into the recording cabinet, so we're going to have to do this quite quickly. You have asked for a raw, unnarrated file with outtakes, warts and all.
Oh, you're getting it.
So this will be hilarious.
Celestial Shores.
By Sarah Day and Tim Pratt. Narrated... I always forget the narrated part, so we have to do it again. You do the narrated by, okay? So we'll do the title again.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Celestial Shores.
By Sarah Day and Tim Pratt.
Narrated by Marguerite Kenner.
And Alice. Should we do our own names?
It's going very well.
We'll do our own names.
We'll do our own names.
Okay, there you go.
Spheres. You love spheres. People ask, what does Brit love? And I say, she loves spheres. Makes you easy to shop for.
Bitches love spheres.
Bitches love spheres.
It's got spheres. Bitches love spheres. Sorry. I'm at top of page 7, everybody.
And that led them to a neatly mowed, 5-foot wide trail through the tall glass.
Through the tall
Different,
glass.
equally scary story.
Bitches love spheres.
They ambled down the street until they hit a trail marker, decorated with that split circle. You motherfucker. I was like, I'm going to style it out. I'm not going to style it out.
Okay.
I did not have that
At all. Try again.
They ambled.
Fine, I'm going to have a sip of water if you're going to keep laughing.
Oh. I just want to add to the record, my water isn't in here.
Bitches love spheres.
They ambled down the street. You.
We're not going to be able to use any of these bloopers if we keep swearing this bad.
Flip you, mother flipper.
Oh, okay. Lion face.
Ooh, lemon face.
Ooh. Okay. You're reading ahead. I can tell you read ahead to the pun. Come on, we're never going to get through this.
On a diagonal path towards the ocean. The storm...
You made it through the sentence.
Shut up.
Pick it up with the stalks.
Shut up. Hello?
Oh, that's my line. Crap.
Narrator. That line will come back to haunt
Want to
everyone.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to have a drink of water. And yawn. I don't know whether to feel sorry or excited for the person who's going to edit this.
You're welcome. Because I'm going to need that boat.
No, because I'm going to need that sphere. There we go. The fuck? Let me try that again. And meant it with all... Oh, sorry, let's do that line again.
Thanks, asshole.
Somebody's doing donuts. Here we go. The light from the bedroom refracting is totally a word now. Refracting. Look it up. Perfectly cromulent. Ray gazed rapt. Okay, that's a heck of a sentence. The deer made their way shyly. Blah, 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 blah. Sorry.
Spell that.
The baby beer. There is no baby beer. Do. Brit mule kicked the cultist, holding her in the kneecap. I don't want to do that line again. Now you escape. That is a lovely ending.
Isn't that great?
That is a great ending.
Somewhere M.R. James goes, see, holidays are bullshit.
I think I've driven by these cabins. I'm convinced they're on Highway 1, just north of Mendocino, right? Totally driven by these places. No, you have to take boner pills and get cancer like the rest of us. Oh no, now I have to, I have to calculate pi for infinity because Shepard turned on the Overlord. That was good. Is there anything else you want to take another go at?
I think I'm good all the way through. Ray, I think, hit the right level of wiener.
Oh, yes, he's definitely a wiener. This is some bull.
What? I said I was sorry. No, you didn't. I was like I did.
I just wanted a nice dinner, you asshole. But no, you had to drag me out here and be eaten by spheres.
Man, the lesson in all of this is don't f***ing overcompensate. Seriously, my guy.
Just apologize and buy her a nice dinner, okay?
Hey, honey, I'm really sorry. I was a dick. Do you want to go to that sushi place you like? Or the good Denny's? You know, the one on this side of town? Yeah, okay. The end.
The end. And
world not destroyed. In fact, that's it. The world is destroyed entirely because Ray has no sense of proportion. Don't be Ray, everybody.
Should we do the all things serve the spheres line again? We should do it like the claw.
All things serve the spheres.
Yes, exactly. Okay. All right, I think that's...
The sphere moves. The sphere moves.
You know there's a human version of that? Human version of the claw game. They basically fill a gigantic pit with like giant squishy things and they suspend you as a person and drop you. And then you can grab as much as you can and then they crane you out. And whatever you can continue to hold on to, you get to keep. I've seen it on TikTok.
Now see, if that was the Hunger Games, I would be completely behind that.
I know. All right. I hope you enjoyed this ridiculously lengthy raw audio and that it worked well.
So anyway, how have you all been?
And we'll let us know if you need anything and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Podcasts like this one are a labor of love. The lion's share of our donations go to ensure we pay our authors professional rates in a publishing industry where that has become hard to find, especially for short fiction. Please support us even just a little bit by visiting PseudoPod.org and clicking on Feed the Pod. PseudoPod is part of Escape Artists Incorporated and is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Theme music is by permission of Anders Manga. And PseudoPod knows that death has reared himself a throne in a strange city lying alone, far down within the dim west, where the good and the bad and the worst and the best have gone to their eternal rest. There are shrines and palaces and towers, time-eaten towers that tremble not, resemble nothing that is ours. Around by lifting winds forgot, resignedly beneath the sky, the melancholy waters lie.